Welcome back to another episode of The Best Things About the Stone Age, where we take a deep dive into prehistory. This is episode 2 of a 4-part documentary series all about the Stone Age here on YouTube. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe so that you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. In today's episode, we explore what it means to be human. From our humble beginnings around 3 million years ago, right up to the end of the Palaeolithic. We'll explore loads of different species across the human timeline, including Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, Neanderthal and Homo sapien. Take a deep dive into what animals were around back then and how they would have died out. Don't forget to stay tuned to the end of the video to find out my favourite thing about the Palaeolithic. Let's get into it. So what is the Palaeolithic? It essentially refers to the Old Stone Age. This period of time would have been around 3.3 million years ago to about 11,700 years ago. 3.3 million years ago is significant because it marks the dawn of man itself, early humanity in its finest form, our earliest form. It's when we would have started to evolve and move across the landscapes of this great globe that we call Earth. So I think it's probably fitting that if we're to explore the Palaeolithic, we need to first explore what the world was like back then. So what was life like in the early Palaeolithic? Massive tectonic shifts would have given rise to giant landscapes, massive mountain ranges, things like what is now modern day India smashing into southeast China and southeast Asia, massive mountain ranges that we now know as the Himalayas. For the first time in Earth's history, North and South America were finally connected by a strip of landmass known as Central America. That would have been migrational animals and would have given early sort of mammals, reptiles and other animals the opportunity to pass from land to land for the very first time. Great glacial movements as well would have meant for large-scale freezing all over the planet. The North Sea that now separates Scandinavia from Britain would have at times been a massive sheet of ice and been completely impassable for anybody trying to cross, especially in the time period known as the Pleistocene epoch. This ultra cold, ultra inhospitable climate, that's a crazy environment to sort of live in, grow up in, try and thrive in, try and survive in. It must have been so difficult for our early ancestors, which is why we probably didn't leave Africa until much, much later on. This time period was followed by huge global warming, which would have spread across the Earth and really warmed up the atmosphere. Especially towards the end of the Palaeolithic, the globe was starting to heat up. With all this newfound warmth in the planet, it gave rise to things like forests and woodland, and with that came small game creatures, things like deer, other mammals. And this, along with early hunter-gatherers in the Palaeolithic times, hunting would have meant the demise of the woolly mammoth, the woolly rhino, and other such megafauna that would have been stunning to behold. So let's talk about you and I. Let's talk about the human species. How did we get here? What was our earliest form? How did we evolve? And what does it mean to be human on this planet? Some of our earliest and most prominent ancestors would have been Homo erectus. They were nomadic back then, and they would have explored new lands, moving from place to place at the beginning of the Palaeolithic, eventually conquering vast areas of land that spanned from Africa into North Africa and the Middle East and into Asia. This great exploration of Homo erectus would have started around 2.5 million years ago. Considering Homo heidelbergensis wasn't really around until 500,000 years ago, that just shows the great scale that we would have gone on and such an epic journey of evolution that it took to get to where we are today. So what came after that? Enter Homo heidelbergensis. Around 500,000 years ago, Homo heidelbergensis started to evolve and travel through Europe and Asia and mixing with other species, eventually finding things like Neanderthals and eventually us as Homo sapiens. So what about stone tools? It's absolutely mad to think that the earliest stone tools that we would have been making are around 3 million years old. These stone tools would have been made on the East African Rift. It's thought that before stone, we were using rudimentary tools made out of wood and bone, but this stone revolution was dubbed the Older One Stone technology by paleontologists and archaeologists alike. With this Older One style of flint knapping, wouldn't have been napped per se. There would have been very little flake reduction things would have just been carved very roughly. Stone flakes used to cut and process meat and meals, and larger tools used as hand axes. Later on into the Paleolithic, we find more and more elaborate stoneworks, such as the Acheulean hand axe. Here's an example of one that I've made, testing it out in the woods and carving out and digging out a fire pit to have a fire. Here are some more examples of the Acheulean hand axe. Its pear drop or teardrop shape is so distinctive, and later on became more and more pointy and delicate like this one. It's absolutely crazy to me that this was the lower Paleolithic and already we were making purpose-built, thought about, precise and intricate stone tools. A lot of these were found in North Africa, Spain and France, and around that kind of middle belt of the globe. We also started to develop our very first fires. I've done a video before on man's first fire, so go and check that one out. We'd have used things like iron pyrites along with flint, other stones that can catch and cast sparks, and we would have used, believe it or not, mushrooms to create our first fires. These are bracket fungus mushrooms, known as conch fungus, and they grow out the side of trees. There are all different types of this mushroom available to us, and our ancestors would have known that too. Fomes fomentarius, the horse's hoof fungus, is a great example of this. It's known as the false tinder fungus because there is one better, the chaga fungus. The slow burning nature of these mushrooms and the inner trama layer with its suede material feel to it, to the ability to carry fires, transport embers from place to place. So important when you're a nomadic hunter-gatherer. Things like iron pyrites or fool's gold, which is found on the Jurassic south coast of England, would have been a very, very key tool that we would have used in our arsenal in early primitive firelighting. Once harvested on the beach, you can break it open and get into the inside of the core material. Then, using direct percussion against another stone or another piece of iron pyrites, it will create cool, cold sparks, nothing like the steel sparks that you see today. But this would have been enough, just enough for early humans to make their first embers. And when that ember is glowing hot and oxygen is into the mix, what do we get next but fire? I truly believe that fire was the catalyst for our evolution as a human species. So apart from hiking miles and miles and miles, as we quite obviously put ourselves through, how else did we get around? We're still not truly sure how soon we ventured out into the open seas, but it is believed, some people believe, that Homo erectus gave birth to the very first rafts or rudimentary vessels as early as Homo erectus, which is crazy to think about. But it does make sense, because it would have given them the opportunity to explore new lands, new islands even. It's said that one of these islands was Flores Island, and would eventually see the evolutionary rise of Homo florensis. Another one of my favourite things about the Paleolithic would have been about the community spirit and social structure that we all shared as humans. Things like cave art, jewellery, fashion choices, clothing, all these kinds of things, and even the earliest forms of music would have been so important to our morale, our mental health, as we were foraging, hunting, walking around on the go in search of shelter, food. What about social structure then? Whether it's ritual, spirituality, religion, processional or ceremonial rituals and routines that we would have gone through, burial chambers, anything like that, Stone Age people were doing it. Believe it or not, the earliest forms of jewellery were found in the Paleolithic, which again is crazy to think about. This rudimentary kind of expressive creativity that we would have all had deep within our roots as humans gave birth to such wonderful artifacts like this stone necklace and shell necklace that you can see here. Later on, musical instruments would have been started to crop up in our timeline. Things like early flutes and woodwind instruments made from bone and wood, carved little holes in to play a beautiful melody and a tune, accompanying possibly singing, percussion and banging of drums, stretched hides over wooden frames. This would have been the very rhythm of our species. These remarkable finds always blow my mind and always fill me with fascination whenever I want to learn about the Stone Age or take a deeper dive as a bushcrafter. So what you ask is my favourite thing about the Paleolithic? Well, I'm a bushcrafter, so I will be a little bit biased. It's going to be fire. Our earliest primitive fires would have given rise to something that, again, as I say, I believe is the catalyst of what makes us human. The fact that we developed fire all those thousands of years ago, possibly millions of years ago, is crazy to think about and would have given us such an advantage and turned us into the apex predator that we are today. From the skills it takes to seek out the right firewood, making sure you've got the right seasoned dry bits of wood to throw onto the fire, to the thrill of using nature, harnessing nature for its rawest of materials and getting to work with them to create a spark. The overall sense of achievement of blowing a tinder bundle into flame and finally holding that orange glow within your hands. Fire is amazing. And imagine, just imagine being the first one to do it. The sense of fulfillment and achievement would have been absolutely immense. And you would have passed that knowledge down to your children and them to theirs and them to theirs and so on. In the next episode, we take a deep dive into the Mesolithic, the Middle Stone Age. This is where the tools and the equipment and the knowledge and the skills that we possess absolutely go up tenfold. We're starting to halve things into wooden handles. We're starting to make bows and arrows. We're starting to become that apex predator. Truly top of the food chain. This was revolutionary for its time, and we were able to hunt at long distance as well as close range. So don't forget to subscribe and check out the bell notifications as well so that you don't miss next week's episode all about the Mesolithic. That's the end of the video, guys. I hope that you've learned something. If you have, give it a little like below. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you next week.